unreasonable number of bizarre things happen to Maddie Fay. And I've been thinking a lot about why that might be. And my current theory is that the reason why unreasonable things seem to keep happening to her is because she's not a regular human entity. She is in fact like a forest spirit. Or a water nymph who has come to live among us. And we are all the richer for it. This is Maddie Fay.
I broke free on a Saturday morning. I put the pedal to the floor, headed north on Mills Avenue, and listened to the engine roar. My broken house behind me and good things ahead. A girl named Kathy wants a little of my time. 6 cylinders underneath the hood, crashing and kicking. Aha, listen to the engine whine. I am gonna make it through this year if it kills me. Roswell, Georgia. Me, age 12. Recently vegetarian, really into cargo pants, hell on a Razor scooter. My primary interests were experimental music and computers and the occult and my dog. My boyfriend was a socialist. My teacher told me I was precocious and a little unapproachable, which I think was teacher speak for what all the other kids in my class called me, which was scary and weird. I was home alone one afternoon on my parents' computer, reading Wikipedia articles about plagues and parasites, normal kid stuff, and listening to online radio the first time I ever heard the Mountain Goats. The Mountain Goats, for the uninitiated, are a band formed in 1991 by John Darnielle, the band's songwriter, main singer, and lead guitarist, occasional pianist, and only permanent member. The band has since developed an intense following of dedicated weirdos. Their songs are simple and honest and often painful. They write about loss and addiction and abuse, but also about survival and recovery and love. Even their really dark songs became precious to me because they made me feel understood, and they gave me words for experiences that I did not yet know how to articulate. For a strange, lonely kid, feeling like maybe I wasn't alone in the world was nothing short of life-changing. I cranked up the volume on the computer, and the tinny lo-fi music blared through the little speakers like some kind of low-budget prophecy. There will be feasting and dancing in Jerusalem next year. I am gonna make it through this year if it kills me. Murray, Utah, age 17. Optimistic, really into crystals and sage. 9 months sober. I had spent the better part of the last year in a residential psychiatric treatment center almost 2,000 miles away from home. It was scary and hard, but necessary, and honestly, it saved my life. I was nearing the end of my program, and it was customary at this time to perform a burning ritual. So I gathered up old journals full of teenage self-loathing and drug-addled rambling, clothing that had become inextricably linked to traumatic memories, letters and gifts from some of my most toxic relationships, fun stuff. And I brought all of these artifacts of my illness out into the sun in front of my therapist and my mentors and all of the other girls in the program who'd become like sisters to me. I was allowed to pick a soundtrack for this ceremony, and so, of course, it was to the sound of the Mountain Goats that I lifted each of the items up into the air, told its story for the first and last time, and dropped it into the fire. As I watched the last of my things burn, a song cut through the air. I'd heard it 1,000 times before, but suddenly it had new meaning. Play with matches if you think you need to play with matches. Seek out the hidden places where the fire burns hot and bright. Find where the heat's unbearable and stay there if you have to. Don't hurt anybody on your way up to the light and stay alive. Just stay alive. Asheville, North Carolina, 20 years old, new tires on my car, desperately in love. I was smoking a pack and a half of Marlboro Red 100s every day, and I couldn't stop taking pictures of my boyfriend on my cell phone because even licking guacamole off his fingers, he was still the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. We drove up to Asheville from Georgia, got a motel room, which we stopped in only long enough to drop off our stuff and take some gross couple selfies, and then we were off to our destination where we were going to see the mountain goats in person for the very first time. We arrived at the Gray Eagle, half taqueria, half concert venue. We wanted to get there early so that we could get a good spot, and we were the first people there by a margin of about an hour and a half. I think we even beat the band. We filled this time talking about our future and our history and which romantic Mountain Goats lyrics we wanted for our coordinating tattoos that we were totally gonna get when we got home. When they finally opened the doors, we rushed into the space and we got places dead center, right in front of the stage. The opening band was dark and weird and wonderful and over way too quickly because before I had time to prepare myself, I was face to face with the Mountain Goats. For the first several songs, I was so overwhelmed and awed that all I could really do was stand and stare up at the stage, transfixed. But by about song 5, I was openly weeping, and when I looked around me, I saw that I was far from the only one. The whole atmosphere was reverent and electric. I felt the way I think you're supposed to feel in church. It seemed like we had all come here to be healed. I let the familiar music wash over me until I heard the opening chords of the song that my boyfriend and I were half convinced had been written for us. I reached for his hand as he reached for mine, and we ended up just sort of holding each other. In this moment, I couldn't imagine a future without him. I felt like everything was going to be okay as long as we had each other. We are filled with riches and wonders. Our love keeps the things it finds, and we dance like drunken sailors, lost at sea, out of our minds. You find shelter somewhere in me. I find great comfort in you, and I keep you safe from harm. You hold me in your arms, and I want to go home, but I am home. Salt Lake City, Utah, age 20, ex-smoker, angry, tired, humble. Not long after the concert, some kind of heavy shit happened to me, and as a result, for the first time since leaving treatment, my mental illness felt completely out of control. I started picking up some of my old self-destructive behaviors. I was so ashamed that I started lying to myself and to everyone around me. I sabotaged my most important relationships. I pushed away my closest friends. And I lost my boyfriend. Not officially yet, but it was coming. I lost my best friend of 8 years, and I felt like I had lost myself. So when I got the opportunity to fly back to Utah for a reunion, I pounced. I was going to spend an entire week with some of my closest friends from treatment, women who knew me better than anyone, even after not seeing me for years. With this intimacy came accountability. These women were really used to calling me on my shit, and they were not afraid to tell me what they thought about my patterns of dishonesty and codependency and self-destruction. They were also some of the most understanding people in the world, and they reminded me that struggle isn't failure. They told me they were proud of me for how far I had come and that I hadn't given up. After a couple of days of these kinds of conversations, I was proud of me too. At the end of the week, before we all scattered back to our separate ends of the earth, we did what young people in recovery do, and we went to a tattoo parlor all together. We each got a different tattoo, one that we felt represented our personal recovery as well as our time together. I got one on my right thigh, a lit match. As I got on the plane to go home, I felt hopeful again. I knew that a week away I wasn't going to fix all my problems, and I had no idea what I was going to do when I got home, but I knew that I could handle it. I have come too far and fought too hard to ever give up. As I looked out the window and the mountains grew smaller and then disappeared altogether, I settled back in my seat, put on my headphones, and cranked up the Goats, that weird little band with their weird little songs about wrestlers and road trips and aging alcoholics that had gotten me through so much. That had gotten me through so much. I start laughing like a child, and I count their faces one by one. Transfiguration's gonna come for me at last, and I will burn hotter than the sun. I waited so long, and now I taste jasmine on my tongue, and I feel so proud to be alive. And I feel so proud when the reckoning arrives.